Hola, friends and neighbors. If you're tuning in to my very first full-length tutorial, I want to thank you, first of all. I'm about to take you on a mystical, magical journey through the universe. A universal experience. We're going to explore not necessarily how to use resin, but how to use some products like chameleon pigment powders and flakes and metal leaf and things like that with resin in order to create these kinds of deep universe effects, and how this process led to the creation of one of my very favorites of all time that I've done. If you can see in there, let me set it down, how much depth there is. We're going to do these in layers, and we're going to talk about some fun techniques. I'm super excited. This probably isn't the most polished and amazing tutorial that you're ever going to see, but it is my very first full-length one using editing software and all that fun stuff. So thank you for joining me, and welcome to Making Great Space Coasters. Get in, mofos. Let's go crafting. Okay, I'm getting ready to do this chameleon pigment. If you've never seen this before, it's super amazing. It color shifts in the light depending on what angle you view it at, and this one's a really pretty pink gold. And you know, since I've got a little sun shape here, I'm going to use that. Now you can apply it directly and just kind of like abstractly, and you'll end up with, you know, a kind of spatter, neat effect, or you can do it solid. But for this one, I'm going to use a stencil, and this stuff is really cool because it will stick to the silicone mold, and then but it won't stick to other stuff, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what I'm saying here. I'm not very well I'm not terribly well prepared for a tutorial, but you see, you just kind of brush it on, and I've got my other areas that I don't want any of this color on masked off so that they stay clean. And I'm just gonna, I've got like a fluffy little brush to pick up some of the pigment and then gently brush it in, and see how it'll just stick, because that silicone mold is just slightly tacky, I guess is the word. You know what silicone feels like. Anyway, so we're gonna brush, and you want to kind of rub it in, and then when you pour the resin over it, it will stick to it and clean it right off the mold. And there's a process that we're going to do after we've laid down our first layer of resin, where while it's tacky and not completely cured, we're going to add another layer of the color shifting flakes to the background, and we'll create some of that interesting depth. It's gonna be so cool. So it's a little tedious, you know. You can see I'm having to take my time and work in little amounts, because this stuff, you can see it want to float in the air. You should probably like tie a little bandana around your face or something while you're doing this, so you don't inhale those super fine flakes, because it's like working with gold leaf. If you've ever done anything like that, it tends to blow all over the place. So working with a tiny brush like this helps, because I'm only picking up a little tiny amount at a time. And then, yeah, like you might want to cover your face. So I'm gonna go ahead, and as soon as I'm done with that, I cap it for exactly that reason, like one heavy huff, and that stuff's gonna be all over in the air. Okay, so now I'm going to very gently remove this. Pick that up. And there we go. Isn't it beautiful? Just absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so we have a beautiful sun in the sky. What do we want to do next? Now, with this one, you can see, if you look really closely, to get some of that kind of like deep universe effect, I've got little bubbles and more flakes of the color down inside there. So I'm gonna grab some bubbles and stuff right now, and we're gonna fill it very carefully in those little edges. Bubbles. Okay, since for this one we are gonna do like a bright sunshiny scene, not an evening thing. This is the girl for that one, so she's gonna, you know, she looks like she's ready for the beach, so she'll sit kind of down here. So I'm gonna use blues and whites. This one's not gonna get stars like He-Man did, but I have these little tiny teeny weeny spoons. They come with resin kits and stuff like that, and these are little miniature bubbles, many sizes with slight variations in blue tones. You can pick these up. I think I got these ones at Michael's, and it'll last you forever. I have done a million projects and been using this and barely touched it. And so, like, my sister and I have made the agreement that, you know, if you need any of these kinds of supplies, you come over here and use some of mine, okay? Because I have a lot. So I use the little spoon, and I'm just going to very carefully put it down in there, and then kind of shift it around a little bit. They're going to float a little tiny bit and move around once we start adding that first thin layer of resin anyway, so you don't have to be super exact. And the resin that I use has a pretty long open time, so you have that opportunity to kind of move stuff around when you need to or whatever. Okay, I really like that. Not too much, not too much. But I've got it right down inside there. And then, just for a little extra depth, we're going to use some of they're sort of clear iridescent, just a tiny bit of iridescence. But by going ahead and using some of those, they're not gonna show as much, the clear ones, but what they'll do is kind of add depth. Because another neat little trick that I have learned is that once you pour that first layer of resin with these slow cure resins, you have a little bit of time to add more inclusions, like I was talking about, and move some stuff around. So I will probably add a little bit of, what do you call this stuff? They make it look like opals. I'll show. Let's see. This stuff is made, you know, specifically for resin art, but it's just very fine flakes of, you know, sometimes it's mica, and I think these ones, what is that made of? I don't even freaking remember. I'm pulling a complete blank right now. But that one is pretty much ready for our first layer. Now I've got another one that I want to try a process with, and I've got another little woman for this one. Let's see if I can find her real quick. Let's see. So for this one, I'm going to do a similar color shift thing, but I'm going to choose a different tone. And why don't we go with this really pretty pinky purpley green one to start with and do some of that. This one we're going to do, I think, multicolor, but we're also going to try really, really hard. In fact, let's mask some of it off so that we can try and get it only where we want it. Because I would like the wings to be one color and then to be able to add a second tone behind it, like areas that aren't the wing. And then it'll get a black background like the He-Man thing did. And a little bit of like color going over isn't going to be a big deal. I am not going to worry about that. I think this is going to work out beautifully. But this one might take me just a minute because it's so many little tiny crevices, and I'm going to have to be really careful to try and get my keep my outlines, you know what I mean? So I'm going to come back in just a minute. Okay, that worked. And I finished this up off camera because, you know, tedious and tiny, but that's what it ends up looking like once you remove the stencil, and you can clearly see the outline of the wings. So what I'll do is my first layer of resin will be clear, and then I'll add some more little funky things, and then it'll get a black background, because without the black, this stuff doesn't really pop much, you know what I mean? It'll be really hard to see. But once that black's behind there, it's going to be gorgeous. I've added just a little bit of stones around there, around the edge to get it started. But look at the color shift in this, if you can see that. Oh, isn't that fantastic? It's going to be really pretty. Okay, so I'm going to set that one aside. This one's ready to go. We got some little bubbles and gold and different fun things, and our sunburst, which has a really interesting shift too between like a kind of gold and pink. So now let's talk about this stage. Okay, so this one is ready to have this on it, and I don't know if this is going to end up looking upside down or right side up when I get there, but what I do for these is I laminate my little figure and my butterfly wings, and I get my little figures all kinds of places, but calendars are my favorite. I like to after I use a calendar, try to recycle the pretty images and stuff. And the little preview images on the backs of the calendars is the perfect size for stuff like decorating dollhouses. So that's how I started doing that. And then use the bigger images for decoupage and mixed media art. I've always really liked collage and media. So I didn't want to show the process of that, but the reason that you laminate a natural butterfly wing is because the color and the pattern is visible because of the scales in it and how they reflect the light. So if they fill up with resin, the scale can't reflect light anymore, and it'll turn into like a skeletal looking thing. If you've ever picked up some of those older pieces, you can find them at yard sales from the 60s and 70s. I don't have one anymore. I just got rid of it because I thought I was moving. It'll be like you can only see the faint outline of the veins of the butterfly after many years. And these may still fade, but having it laminated will preserve it for a lot longer, for one thing. And it'll keep it still for another, because sometimes the resin migrates while you're working with it. Same with the little figure, you know, she won't fade as much. But here's the other thing. Okay, now I cut this one to fill the entire space because I've done some previously where I tried to crowd many of them onto one laminating sheet and then cut them up close. And that's fine. That works. You know what I mean? But you can end up with a problem like this. And let's see if we can get a good enough angle on this without glare. If you look really closely, you can see the edges of where I cut out the laminated part. And you can, you know, it shows inside of the resin from certain angles. And that's not a huge problem. This is going to be one for my own collection or for somebody who doesn't give a darn about that. Because it's really pretty, and everything about it I'm happy with and I love. But that little air bubble might be a problem in the future. So with, you know, my first few that I did, yeah, I learned that this full size cutout eliminates most of the air bubble problem, except for that little bubble around him. And unavoidable, we don't care. So when I do them now, I give myself plenty of space on a laminating sheet. I'll only do a few on an 8x10 sheet so that I have plenty of space around each one to cut it out to the shape that I need. And I don't always use real wings, obviously. This one was from a scrapbook set of paper that I got forever ago. But it's really pretty. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it goes with this lady's outfit pretty nicely. But it's just regular paper. I just used it because it's double-sided scrapbook stuff, so it'll still look really cool if I do a clear cast with this one, or if I put it on a black background like that, you know what I mean? It'll still be beautiful. So now what we're going to do is, I know that I'm going to use this one, but I want to add just a little bit more depth because I went a little crazy with the chameleon and stuff in here, and I didn't get quite the depth I want, but I have an opportunity to create more because I put these in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my glue, which I should have had. I should have already had that over here, but I didn't. You will forgive me, I'm sure. And find a toothpick. Okay. So, first thing I'm going to do is I have some stars over here, little tiny ones. They're silver and whatnot. I'm going to just get a little dab of glue, just a little bit, doesn't take much, and just kind of place them, actually place them right down and let them dry. And then I'm going to add my my laminated fairy over the top of that. Let's put one, let's see where she's gonna, okay, she's gonna sit about there, so we could put one over here somewhere. That'll look good. And then let's add another gold one. About right there. I'm also going to add a few to the top here, and see I got a little bit of glue on there and I didn't mean to, but it's not going to matter because that's going to get completely glued down, and that's going to you know, we'll be able to hide any flaws or anything once it's glued down. So let's see, we'll put one on top over here so that she gets some going in front of her as well. And put that one right up there. Like that, see? And I do have some of these itty bitty miniature stars. I'm gonna add just a few of those. And when this glue is dry, that's when I'll put this one down. And I'll show that process too, because you want to make sure to get as much of the air bubbles out as possible. Okay, we're back. So I poured my first very thin layer of resin. And I don't know if you can see it because of the glare, but it's not even, yeah, it's about half full. There's room for one more layer. And what I did was, once I poured the resin in, I went around the edge of this one with a little cup like this, filled with powdered glow-in-the-dark pigment. And I very carefully poured it around the edge, like when the resin was fresh, because it starts to migrate towards the center. So after a couple of minutes and it migrated in a little bit, I added another ring the same way. So it'll migrate in at a slightly different rate. It might end up close to the first ring when it finally settles, but I'm trying to create concentric glowing rings in that one. And then this one is going to be the next He-Man one. So I didn't do much of anything while it was wet. That was all the treatment that we did to the mold itself. The only thing I did here was I did the same kind of number with this little cup, and I used a whitish glow-in-the-dark powder, but it'll glow green. So when He-Man is in there, you know what I mean, he'll have glowing pigment behind his sword for this one. This one, that was the one with our neat sun design, the color shifting. Once the resin, the first, and this layer's really nice and thin. You can see the edge there. We've still got room for another layer. I got some bubbles to pop. On this layer, I added a little bit of green glitter and these little chipped stones and some flowers, and that's it. And once this layer sets, then we'll be able to do the next layer. And I know it looks like crazy garbage right now, but trust me, this is going to be fantastic. All of these will be really pretty when they're done. And actually, while it's wet, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be adding a little bit more junk to some of them, but not until it's tacky, like almost solid. When it's almost solid, it'll be a teeny bit tacky on the back, and at that time, you can add things like more of that chameleon pigment, or stuff like this will kind of float on the top the closer it gets to hardened. So you can start to create different depths by having some things right next to the mold itself, and then some things added as the resin is settling. See there? You can see the dimension in those green rings, how one is kind of above the other. And I don't know if it'll settle that way, but if it does, that'll be awesome. So yeah, like some of this is going to sink down a little bit more, but by the time it sinks like midway or partway in, you know, we'll know where we're headed for our next layer. So we'll come back to these in a little while when they're nearly dry, and I'm going to add a little bit of color shift to the background of this one. Okay, so these are at that stage now where they're just tacky on back but hard enough that I'm not going to mess it up too badly, hopefully, when I go to brush on some more of this pigment. And I'm going to do just a little bit of green right over where these flowers and stuff are, and it's going to create a background, because remember, we're doing this backwards. That's a fun design challenge, though, to know that you're going to be viewing it from the other side and still try to, you know, come up with something cool backwards. But I seem to do a lot of things backwards. That's okay. So, you know, I won't stay on too long with this phase, but you can see it's just tacky enough that that works, because now that pigment is sticking, and it's not sticking everywhere, so it really is like really close to time. I got back into this just at the right moment. I'm just gonna, you know, kind of rub it in there to create some depth in the background, and kind of decide how to create some depth of color in the front too. And what is going to be my sky up there around the sun. And that's really tacky. Okay, we got, ooh, that's good. This is going to be so pretty. I'm excited. Let's get a little bit more there. Just make it kind of uneven, you know, in a couple places, so it's mystical and whimsical. Okay, so I think we're done with the green. And that one doesn't shift a lot that I've noticed, but this is the first time I've gotten to use this particular green, so I'm excited to see what it does. I use the other one a lot because it's got that like a pinky purple when it shifts. Now I'm only going to use a little tiny touch here and there of this one in the sky, and I mean just a few touches, because I don't want to interfere with the sun too much, but I also want to start to create a barrier around it. You know what I mean? Like a clear kind of barrier, because I want to get some pale blue, maybe some pearlescence to create the sky itself. But in order for this sun to pop, it's got to have a dark background. So I'm going to try for the first time to rub some black pigment right there behind it. It really can't hurt. It's just a matter of whether or not it'll work. Because ultimately this is going to get a full coating of black on the back, so that all of it really pops out. Bright, bright, bright. Ooh, oh, whoosh, that was almost a catastrophe. There must be a sticky spot right there, and we will leave in the bloopers. Oh yeah, look at that. All that pigment could have just ended up somewhere, but instead of wasting it, I'll scoop a little bit of it up on my brush and just put it over there, because that's where we're moving to next. Okay, and what do I want to use on that one? Don't really want to use green. This is where the ground is that He-Man will be standing on. I kind of want to use something darker than that. I have an idea. Okay. Okay, this one, I'm not sure if you'll be able to really get a feel for quite how neat this pigment is. I'll tell you the name of it as soon as I've applied a little. But this is like a straight mica powder pigment. And these are great for just a million different applications, but oh yeah, that's gonna work. I'm just going to dust it in there. And I think it'll create a really pretty kind of pearly effect. But this one's got a deep kind of bronzy brown hue. And then, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but once you see it, oh, woo! And most of these pigments, like the photos that I'm capable of taking right here, do not do them justice. They're so pretty. Okay, and that actually went on really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and try, while I've got everything right here, to do a little brushing of black pigment behind the sun there. And now I know not to stick anything in that spot, because there's a sticky spot and I might end up in a pickle. Whew. Okay, so we're just gonna dust it on. Woo! Be careful, careful, Jenny. Careful, careful. Breathe lightly. Might end up looking a little weird, but we're not going to worry about it. This is totally an experimental one for our purposes of doing our first full-length tutorial. And I figured now was a good time to do something like that because I've been meaning to. And I actually had nearly a full tutorial recorded before. And then I was like, I don't know, how much do I want to focus on crafts on my channel? Because, you know, just truth be told, I'm messy. I'm so super messy with my crafts. It's not even funny. I'm going to put some of that down in here because there's a bit much. A little too much up there. But that'll add some more depth. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and not touch this anymore, because we've illustrated the point that once it's tacky, you can add some more of your pigments. And we're gonna go ahead and put our clear coat on it. The other one, I'm not adding anything else to it because it's just gonna get the solid black behind it now, so that all of that chameleon pigment really pops out. Okay, quick clip, because last night I got up at, I don't know, like 3 or 4 in the morning, and this was hard enough that I was able to dump another layer on top of it. And this was the one where we had the funky sun thing going on. And I decided, since I didn't know how it was going to turn out, this whole thing is going to be an experiment. So I did something similar to how you would pour a geode, but since this is going to be all in reverse, we don't really know what's going to happen. And this is not like a how to use resin tutorial. This is how to get effects tutorial. So I didn't do any of that on screen, but what I did was basically run a color stripe through these areas here, and then a little bit of clear, and then pearl white. And then once you have a couple of layers laid down, then you start dropping bits of the clear or the other color within the others, and it creates these pools. So like, if this were going to be the front design of something, at least we know, hooray, that like this combination of the color shift and then this cobalt blue over it, I will use that in a geode because that's beautiful. But as far as what it's going to look like on the front, we don't know. So I'm going to share the moment of truth with you because it is firm enough to demold now. So let's see. And it could be complete crap, or it could be a totally beautiful thing. Let's see. Ooh, okay. It's quite interesting. It's kind of a black hole sun. It's interesting. Let's see what happens. There. See, the light makes all the difference because it looks funky without it. But my studio lighting right here is not the best. It could be better. Oh, now with white behind it rather than black, that's going to be spectacular. Let's see if I can move it a little bit into the sunlight so you can really see. And you still can't really see. The light is just so crap-tastic right now. But you can see when you're in person with it. Let's see if we can get a better angle. That is strange. But I think that the answer is yes. We do like it. Look at how much depth there is back there behind the greenery. And I was kind of wondering if, when I did it like this, if it would look like an undersea sort of scene, because it turned out that this green that I used shifts towards blue. So what happens if you put it on black? Oh, now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yeah, we're going to do it on black, because then all of a sudden we have all of the depth behind the areas where there was clear and pearl. And now it looks way better. So we're going to do this with black painted on the back and around the edges. So, you know, we'll be back in a bit. Okay, let's talk about one last technique. Now, this was the second of the He-Man Master of the Universe coasters that I made. And I did a poor job of the sword on the first one. So on this one, I decided to get a little more in detail. And I used actual silver leaf. And I did the little dimensional balls for the pommel and those little things on the side of his sword. And it's much better. So we're going to go over very quickly how to do metal leafing if you've never done it before, because I applied this and then I did my final very thin coat of resin to seal everything in and make it extra shiny and beautiful and add more depth. So this is a real quick one, and it's a technique that if you have never used it in any of your art, oh my gosh, start. Okay, now we're going to go over very quickly how to do metal leafing with resin. If you already have a dry surface and you want to add some of that chameleon flake or metal leaf, you would use this stuff. And see, I just did a very thin coat, and I'm going to show you what this is. Try not to let that move. Oh, just pull it right off because the sizing is there. This is what you use when you do metal leaf or those chameleon flakes on a dry surface. This is made by Speedball. It's adhesive size, and it is specifically for metal leaf. So it will work for those chameleon flakes as well. You let it dry. After you apply a very thin coat, you let it dry for 30 minutes, about 20 to 30. And then we're going to come back and we're going to apply the leaf live, and you can see how that goes. Neat. Okay, I let the size dry for a few minutes, and now I'm going to show you how easy it is to apply leaf, and a better way to do it than I have sometimes employed. First of all, make sure you have one sheet. It comes sandwiched in between two very thin sheets like this. Sorry about the thing. So I'm going to expose only the amount that I need, a really small amount, and keep it sandwiched between the paper because it'll go everywhere. And I've masked off every place I don't want to deal with it, don't want it to stick, except for my stencil. And I'm just going to take that exposed part and press it right down. And there it goes. Stick. Stick. Okay, I'm going to get a little brush. And places where it's stuck to the paper, just kind of move it over there, the extra, so that we don't have to use too much. There is sizing on the paper, so some of it's going to stick right to it. We don't care. I bought a pack of this metal leaf when I first moved to Michigan like 5 years ago and started restocking my my art studio, and I've had the same bottle of adhesive size and the same pack of metal leaf. Oh my gosh. Yeah, for 5 years. And I will probably never run out and have plenty to share. I can run full art classes up here, man. But that's something that I like. My cousins were just here visiting from Germany, and the kids love getting to come upstairs in my studio and see what's going on. And I like that they like it. So now I've got it pretty well in there, but I got a little bit of extra on there. I'm going to try to pick that up and get it away from the coaster before I lift off the stencil. Okay. And it's stuck down with a little tape in a few places, but there. Ooh, look. Look how beautifully shiny. And now it doesn't look like that much. But once it's got a black background, look at the depth that gives. Just amazing. So that's going to get one more coat of resin too, to protect the leaf for one thing, so that it doesn't scratch off, but also you know, just to add a little bit more depth. And while one of them was here, she picked this lady to go in there, but I think she'll go down here, and I'm going to add maybe a few gold stars, maybe silver, I'm not sure yet. But that is about it. In just a moment here, we're going to cut to finishing off all of your beautiful multi-dimensional multimedia super spacey coasters. And I will join you back in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about finishing off your coasters and making them, you know, just kind of pretty at the end. Some different techniques that I like to use, different products. This is just ribbon around the edge of this one, and I don't know, the light is so bad during the day here, but you'll bear with me. Can you see that? That's just a 5/8 inch ribbon, which fits around with a little bit of overlap. These 4-inch square coasters, 5/8 inch ribbon fits around them very well. And this is another one where in decent light you can really see the depth and the layers. Let's try to get close to the window and you can see them, aren't they? It's a cute little couple. There is no substitute for being able to look at these in person though and see. Ones like this, that's another ribbon, 1/4 inch on these ones, fit all the way. This is my most shallow of all my molds and the biggest. And this is one of my early attempts at making these, and I did this one clear, and I wouldn't end up giving it as a gift now because you can see all the lines and stuff in the resin, where I, instead of gluing the fairy down, I pushed it right into the wet resin. And that wasn't terrible because this one there's no air bubbles around her where she's pressed in, but the way that it moved the resin and stuff, it still has a different kind of look. I can still work with that. You could, you know, like I can make that look like a geode or something by putting some crystal texture in there from behind, but I decided I liked this one as is, and it doesn't matter that it's, you know, like what I would say is seconds quality. This is one of the ones that we watched the making of in the tutorial, and it turned out really good. It's only 2 layers, but it's the color shift pigment that we love. I can't even tell if my camera's picking this stuff up. I guess we'll find out in a minute. And this was the one on which I illustrated how we use a stencil for the top layer with that stuff. And that's the little the little lady I chose to go in there. This ended up being one of my very favorite ones of all of my coaster creations. The glow in the dark turned out pretty good. It's not quite as bright as I'd have liked, but I just ended up finishing this one again with 1/4 inch trim, and blue felt is what I had sitting around, so that's what I put on the back of that one. To glue felt onto these and the trim, I had my best success with E6000 glue. I also used Aleene's clear tacky glue. It's slightly different than the regular white one, but it does seem to work on these for holding things like trim and felt in place on the bottom. Ones like this, that you watched the creation of this beautiful Masters of the Universe one. I love the depth on this one. I can't even stop. For this one, I chose to leave the sides uncovered because while I was doing this one, I'd had plenty of experience at this point, so I was able to arrange some of the little stars and details. Oh, excuse my blur. Some of those little details right down into the sides of the mold well enough that these sides are interesting to look at and pretty all the way through. And although it doesn't look like the camera's going to pick it up very well, the color shift is in there. Yeah, in fact, that sucks. Maybe we should do it like this. Let's see if you can see the color shift a little bit better. We just have such terrible light lately. But I placed that chameleon flake stuff down right into the sides of the mold so you can see that it's stuck. And because this was also a test piece for the tutorial, it was kind of solid along the sides and you couldn't really see the detail. I didn't know quite what was going to happen. But I took some good strong tape and rubbed it along the sides in places and then pulled it away, which does pull away that chameleon flake when it's used as a surface treatment on the mold like that. But it created a neat effect along the sides, and then I put a gloss top coat over it to protect what's left of the chameleon flake in there so it doesn't come off anymore, but it made for beautiful edges on this one. No need for a weird finishing trim or anything like that. And these ones, you know, the sides just weren't so pretty. You could see the layers where like one layer was clear, one layer is dark, one's glittery, stuff like that. So those got ribbon and that worked out great. And here's another one where I don't know if the video does it justice, but in person the sides of that are very beautiful. So I left them clear. And talk about another finishing thing here. I didn't want it to scratch off the way I was able to do on the other one to expose it. So on any of them where that chameleon powder has been used directly against the mold, you do need a couple of coats of some kind of clear varnish or something on top to make sure that it doesn't just scratch off. I tested it a few times and you can scratch it off with your fingernail if you go really deep. So top coats for sure. This is another good depth one. Oh, look, and there's the sun for a moment. We could have used that while I was filming the intro, but now that it's there, let's see if we can get deep into some of the depth of these. I think that's pretty good though. This ended up, I think, being one of my favorite crafting projects, making this tutorial for you. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this universal roller coaster ride with me, and try some of these different finishing techniques yourself. E6000 glue or Aleene's clear, both work great for sticking things to the outside of completely cured resin. And with that, I guess we're going to leave it. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all of those many things, whatever you're doing, wherever you are in the world. Much love. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Okay, we have one more quick technique to share with you about just general finishing or decorating. Now, I would not have thought of using it this way until someone else showed me, so I'm going to show you. This is double-sided tape. It's 1/4 inch, so it's a little thinner than the edge here, but I like the edges of this, so they're not going to get paint or trim like some of them did. But I want a little bit of extra glitz here, even though this is dope. Look at how cool that turned out, and it'll be even better once there's a backing on it. But anyway, I ran double-sided tape all the way around it, and I made sure to go over it really good with my thumb and just keep pressing and pressing and make sure it's on there really good. And then, so I'm gonna pull the backing off once I'm sure it's on there very, 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 very well. And I've got this glitter pre-mixed. And when I say it's mixed glitter, it's regular green glitter, the holographic type. But I mixed glow-in-the-dark glitter with it because there's some glow in the border of this one. It looks so neat in the dark. We're going to show some of these after a while in the dark. But I'm going to put it in a little container like this. And then I can take it and just roll the edge through there. Ho, 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 ho. Let's see how that turns out. It should be beautiful. And I'll just keep rolling it and rolling it. And then I'll probably go over it a few times. Just keep rolling and pressing. Get it into the corner there again. Roll and press. Roll and press. Make sure I get it covered really well. Looks pretty good everywhere. Just rub, 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 rub. Okay, then I'm going to get a little brush here and brush off the excess. Oh, look at that, Mama. Hey now. See how quickly I did that. That was so easy. You can do it too. I am just going to make sure that this doesn't shed all over the place by going over that with just a tiny amount of clear gloss. And that'll also make sure that the edges of that tape don't come up anywhere because, you know, it'll go over the line, I'm sure, in a few places, and anywhere that seeps in, it's just going to seal it on there really well. So this one just needs a backing and it's done. I'm not going to add anything more to the front of this one other than that thin fine layer to add some depth and protect my chameleon from coming off of there. So this is excuse me, this is the effect of the glow-in-the-dark powder in the resin. And in these places, I just sprinkled a little in. This one that I'm hovering over right now, that's the one that we experimented with while it was in progress in this video. And that is our He-Man. That's the outline of his sword glowing. This is, I gotta say, the He-Man is above and beyond my favorite of all of my great coaster creations here, both for this tutorial and just overall. That one turned out so fun. I love it. So I really hope that you get to do some of these techniques. Ooh, man, that is pretty.